Kuwait has ambitious goals to increase its upstream oil and gas capacity. Please tell us about those, but also, having known you for a long time, you circulate among policy officials. You're very conversant and astute when it comes to the discussion between the energy industry and civil society about this balancing act. So your thoughts on that are welcome as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. In the last couple of decades that we've known each other and been friends, we've been working hard, you and I both together and in various other capacities, about explaining why the oil and gas industry is important to the development of mankind, and you did that excellently in your introduction. From our perspective in Kuwait, we recognize that we in the Gulf have the world's strategic resource, essentially, because of what our minister described in the previous session, the lowest carbon intensity barrel in the world. It's the lowest cost barrel in the world. So we recognize through this energy transition that the Kuwaiti barrel, the Gulf barrel really, is going to be the surviving barrel through this energy transition. That's because of the low cost and the low energy and the low carbon intensity of that barrel, but also because the energy transition, as you keep going forward, is going to require hydrocarbons for the next few decades at least. Energy use is going to increase by 50% between now and 2040, so the pie is larger. If oil and gas demands a smaller portion of that pie, percentage of that pie, on a quantitative level, it's still quite significant. It's still about 100 million barrels of oil a day. So what are we doing about that in Kuwait? And we recognize that we have a responsibility to our customers and to humanity to be responsible providers of energy for decades to come. We've had the same customers for the past few decades, and we intend to have them for the next few decades continuing forward. It's because we offer a sustainable and strong supply of oil. What we're doing, and the minister mentioned some of the grand numbers on a full sector basis, but I'm going to talk about the upstream sector here in Kuwait, or for us in Kuwait. And that is, over the short term, we're going to spend about almost $50 billion over the next 5 years. It's about $9 to $10 billion a year just on the upstream sector. And that's going to be increasing our production capacity from the current numbers of about 2.9 to about 3.2 million barrels a day by the end of next year. It's a good jump, almost 10%. But please remember that in the last year and a half, at least since I took this position at KPC, we've been able to increase our production capacity by almost 300,000 barrels a day. And that was by unlocking the supply chain issues that had constrained us in the past. So we unlocked the supply chain constraints. We're up to almost 2.9 now by drilling 5,000 new wells in Kuwait, by doing 10,000 workovers of existing wells. We have a gigantic resource base, but we are developing different ways now of capitalizing on that resource base. Water management issues will be part of what we're doing, and all of this comes into a design framework that gets us to the 3.2 within the next year, and then gets us ultimately up to 4 million by 2035 with an increase in gas production. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of points that my colleague Jean-Paul had mentioned, certainly about the energy transition and how that works. I'm a firm believer in economics, and economics will drive people's policy, drive people's actions. If we draw the right economic framework, you can have an orderly energy transition. I'll give a couple of examples in Kuwait. Before anybody even knew what an energy transition was or even started talking about that, previous session had talked about gas flaring. We used to flare quite a bit of gas in Kuwait. We stopped doing that not because it was the right thing to do environmentally, which it was, of course, but because we were seeing in the flaring burning up dollars, that we needed the gas for power generation needs and also for petrochemicals. So we took our flaring down, our associated gas flaring, to below 0.5%, which is about one of the lowest in the world. It is now basically down to absolute safety minimums. That's it. What drove us there was economics. It wasn't more than that. honestly, at first. But now, obviously now it ticks a lot of other boxes. Similar case, we have, and I'm talking about here, the plan to increase our production. The very first oil well in Kuwait was drilled in Bahra field in 1936. That's still operating right now. 87 years later, that oil well is still producing. The Bahra field is a relatively small field. It was before we discovered the giant Greater Burgan field, which is the second largest in the world. But Bahra field production went down, 10 years ago, was down to about 5,000 barrels a day. And then we decided to bring in new ways of developing the resource. So that 5,000 production was essentially almost a depleted field at that point. That production has gone up from 5,000 now to 50,000 a day. And we have clear line of sight within the next few years to take it to 140,000 barrels a day. And it's just by bringing in new technology where the economics work, where you can partner with companies from around the world that have the technology, that have tried this technology in other places, where we can create an economic framework that allows them to all work together. So legislating a mandate on no new investment in hydrocarbons resource is, for lack of a better word, preposterous. Thank you.